And now, the worldwide phenomenon. One records in Stowmarket, the other records in Houston. Alex Moss, Burton DeWitt join forces to bring you the weekly Dartscast 180.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast, and for the first time we have two local legends co-hosting this show. I'm Alex Moss, and joining me as always, darts statistician Burton DeWitt. How you doing?
Well, yours only required 4 runs to move into first place. Mine all required 40-something, but I'll let you have it. It still begins with a 4, so good job in that. And advanced apologies to everyone. As has been tradition, there's been a lot of construction going on. After the bad weather, the construction is back working on my shower now. So if you hear any hammering, there's not much I can do about it, but it's just this 1 week. So hopefully you can manage. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing well, thank you, and we've got a lot to discuss. It was a busy weekend, the UK Open. We're going to be looking back on the 3 days in Milton Keynes, and we'll start off with the champion, James Waite, back in the winner's enclosure on TV for the first time since 2018. 10 TV titles now in the PDC, 11 if you include the Jockey Wilson Cup in 2009, if anyone can remember that. But we'll come on to our first of 2 questions of the week, and it is, which bracket best describes James Waite in the GOAT conversation? Top 5 all-time, top 10 all-time, top 5 PDC, or none of the above?
Well, I'll take those in reverse order. I'll throw out none of the above because that just doesn't apply. And unless you're saying he's the greatest of all time or some other reason for going none of the above, I don't think that's a viewpoint that can be defended. He falls into one of those 3 categories. Starting with top 5 for PDC, though, Phil Taylor and Michael van Gerwen. You can put them in either order depending on what criteria you want to use, but they're the clear top 2. And I would say Gary Anderson probably for PDC darts is number 3. But who else are you going to put ahead of James Waite? Maybe Raymond van Barneveld, but his era of dominance was very short. Maybe Dennis Priestley, but again, his era of dominance was pretty short. Adrian Lewis won 2 world titles, but hasn't won much beyond that. James Waite now for almost 15 years has been getting to televised finals, and not just, the odd one. He's averaged in the last 14 years nearly 2 a year if you include World Series events and you include the Jockey Wilson Cup, as you mentioned. I'm not going to include that one. And many of these are the biggest in the sport. He's won the World Match Play. He's lost the final there a couple times as well. He's now won 3 UK Opens, which is probably the 4th most prestigious of the events. I think I would put him for PDC darts, ahead of Raymond van Barneveld into number 4. But I could see the argument going the other way around. Top 10 all time, I think there's also a very, very strong argument for that. I wouldn't put him ahead of Raymond van Barneveld for all time, all things considered, because you have to throw in the dozen years where Raymond van Barneveld was the number 1 in the BDO, and pretty darn close to Phil Taylor in terms of overall level. That's why in his first year he was better than Phil Taylor for a year when Phil Taylor was near his best. But there's not many other people outside of the obvious names that we've gone over in the show that I would put ahead of him. The only thing missing from his CV is a world title, and that is a big thing to be missing. But he almost makes up for it with everything else he's won. I think he's top 5 PDC. I think he's top 10 all time. I'm not going to put him top 5 all time yet, but he's only 37. He has time to do it. If he can win a world title, if he can keep this going for another decade, there's a very good chance he will end up top 5 all time, because his CV will merit it if he does this for another decade.
Yeah, and we've had lots of debate on Twitter as well. This question's going to be running all week on our Twitter poll, so if you're listening to the show, go and check that out and have a vote. We've had a lot of you voting so far, and at the minute, top 10 all time is leading the way. 61% agreeing that he should be in the top 10 of all time if you're going to have that debate. I think there's various factors that people look at with these debates, and obviously the elephant in the room is the World Championship. That is the one big title missing from James Waite's CV, and not even got to a World Championship final either. He's had 3 semi-finals, 2009, 2012, 2013, and the big one that everyone talks about is 2012, isn't it? Quarterfinals against John Park, one of the best games we've ever seen at Ali Pali. The 85 checkout he took out in the sudden death leg, John Park waiting on 40 to win the game. It is typical James Waite, that checkout. And then he goes 5-1 up against Adrian Lewis, the draft gate, ends up losing 6-5. I think he had a match start in that game for 6-2 as well, so he could have got through to a world final against Andy Hamilton. And with all due respect to Andy Hamilton, that was his peak years. He was one of the top players in the game at the time. James Waite would have gone on favourite for that game. He would have had a tough game regardless, but if you're being offered a world final against Andy Hamilton when the other two, I think he'd have had to Phil Taylor, he would have taken that almost 10 years on now, and he is still pushing for these titles, winning these titles. You go back 2007, he won his first big one, the World Match Play, 24 years of age. He's now coming up to 40. He's had a few blips along the way, it's got to be said. There's been some defeats. There's been some times in his career when we're thinking, is this the start of the slide for James Wade? And here we are, 2021. He's now in the top 4. I'm thinking this is the first time that he's been the number 1 English ranked player in the PDC. I'm sure our listeners will let us know if that's wrong, but he's above Rob Cross now. He's in the top 4, top 10 of all time. I think there is a debate, like you say, that you could put him in there. For me, I would definitely put him in that 9 to 15 bracket. Maybe when his career's said and done, we can look back on it and say for definite if he's a top 10 player or if you're going to put him in the top 15. But there's a long way to go, I think, in James Wade's career. And we've seen that at the weekend. He's not a player that you'd say he's on the slide. His best years are behind him. If anything, he's back to playing some of his best starts. And you've got to say, if we did a top 5, top 10 list in terms of timing and big checkouts, James Wade is going to be in that list. And we saw it at the weekend, the 147 against Simon Whitlock, the 150 he had early on in that final against Luke Humphries. He is a player that has got that immense timing in his game. And when it is on, he is hard to beat. And we saw that at the weekend. He's got another title.
Yes, indeed. And I think you're right that this is the first time he is the English number 1. He was English number 2 early in Phil Taylor's swan song year, about 15,000 pounds behind Adrian Lewis. I don't think he ever became number 1, but he is now. But someone who might soon, although not likely anytime this year, but ways going sometime in the next couple of years, be on his tail for that honor, is Luke Humphries, the man he beat in the final of the UK Open, a first major final for Cool Hand Luke. Can he use this as the platform to build on to bigger and better things in 2021? I
think you've got to say yes, it is a big milestone for him, isn't it? Getting to that first major final in the PDC. Joins a list of former PDC World Youth Champions to do that. Michael Smith, Corey Cadby, Dimitri Vandenberg last year. He, of course, was the one that went on to win the title. The other 3 have lost out in the final. But I think you've got to say he's a player that he's good to watch. And case in point was that semi-final against Michael van Gerwen. 107 average, Michael 106 average. 11 out of 16 on the doubles from Luke to win that game. When he's playing in that form, he is a player that you love to watch. He is a stage player. And now the thing for him is, can he take that form? We've seen it, I suppose you can say we've seen it in flashes on the Pro Tour. We spoke about it before. Last year, he was in the top 20 of the overall averages on the Players' Championship circuit. Didn't have much to show for it. Callan Rydz, he was also on that list, and already this year he's got himself a title. So we've seen that if you can continue to play to that level, maybe a little bit more consistently, maybe getting the right shots at the right times, as Michael van Gerwen puts it, then rewards will come. But I think for Luke, if he was going to get to a TV final, this was probably the one that you'd have backed him to, because all the tour card holders are in this event. The big thing for Luke Humphries has been making sure that he is on stage more regularly. And I was looking back the last 2 years, I think we have 7 TV ranking events on the calendar now in the PDC. The last 2 years he's made 7 out of the 14, so 50%. If he starts getting to more of those events, if he qualifies for a World Match Play, World Grand Prix, European Championship, you're going to see him in that top 32 sooner rather than later. I know he's 33rd, very close again now, but if he starts making these TV events more regularly, and he's capable, we've seen it this weekend, of going on deep runs in these events, we will see him eventually get to that top 16. So I think what we've seen at the weekend, it's given him a great taste of what is possible in his career if he puts himself in them positions. Who knows, maybe one day make that step further and win the title as well, because if he performs like he did in that semi-final against Michael van Gerwen in the final, I don't think there's anyone who can beat him really. So I think the future is very bright for Luke Humphries. We've known that for a long time now, but it's now a case of knuckling down on the Pro Tour, grinding out those results, maybe when you're not playing to the best, but getting the wins that's going to take you into those big events that we've not seen him in yet.
Yeah, and that's the key thing, though, is he has to get into those events. He has to get into the World Match Play, the World Grand Prix, 2 events he hasn't been in yet. And the way things are going, he's not going to be in it this year. He's on 6,750 pounds for the World Match Play. That's just more than half of what the current cutoff is. We only know the calendar through April right now, and there could be a Euro Tour event or 2 that get added on as we get into late spring, early summer, and that will give him an opportunity, if he can qualify for those, to really, if he goes on a run like he did this past week, to pick up money. But if not, he's more than a final out, a Pro Tour final out of the spots right now. He didn't play poorly in Bolton a couple weeks ago, but he didn't play great. He was 32nd in averages, so right at the well, basically where he is in the world rankings, right at the bottom of that top quarter of the field. Won 3 matches across the week. That's, you can get hot on a day. You can average 92 on a day and just get a good run together, or you can go out first round, and that's what happened. Twice he went out first round. He's clearly good enough, and there's no doubt about that. And you heard it from James Waite, who doesn't mess around usually in what he'll say, where he's mentioned how Luke Humphries, to quote James Waite, dismantled Michael van Gerwen, and he absolutely dismantled him. Van Gerwen didn't play poorly. Van Gerwen didn't play great. You could even say for Van Gerwen played mediocre, maybe, but it really didn't matter because Luke Humphries didn't give him a chance pretty much that entire match. It was a nearly flawless performance, and probably the only thing that kept him from winning the major was the fact that he had to come back on 20 minutes later and just didn't seem like he had recovered from the emotional high of playing that well and that high of a standard. So we know he can do it, but he just hasn't been doing it enough on the floor. He hasn't been doing it enough on the Pro Tour events. And if you're going to climb the rankings, you're going to have to at some point. I think he's good enough that he will. And, we had this same conversation with one of the other top development tour players not that long ago in Dimitri Vandenberg. And he started to get results, made a couple Pro Tour finals, and then won the World Match Play. We can have a similar conversation with Ted Evans, who didn't even qualify for the World Championships last year, but is also one of those players that similarly has the game and it's shown it at the development tour level, but hasn't yet clicked on the Pro Tour. That's the next step for Luke Humphries, is clicking on the Pro Tour so we can get to those TV events. He's good enough. It will come. This weekend is, I think, just a preview. Whether it's a platform for this year, I don't know yet. I want to see what he does next week. In the second Super Series event. I want to see what he does next month in the third Super Series event. But once he gets it together on the floor, he will start climbing the rankings. There won't be many more years like last year where he's just getting to the World Championships. It's what is he going to be seeded at the World Championships? What is he going to be seeded in the World Match Play in a few years? It's just we need to see it happen. We need to see him get it done first so that he can get in that position to really kick on.
Looking away from the 2 finalists this weekend, then we saw the world's top 2, Gerwyn Price, Michael van Gerwen, make the semi-finals. We saw a new tour card holder, Alan Suter, enjoy a run to the last 16. Who else caught your eye in Milton Keynes at the weekend?
Someone who we haven't really talked too much about recently, after talking about him a lot in the first few years of this podcast, and it's Krzysztof Ratajski. I think you have to start there. Averaging over 100 in all 4 of his matches, dismantling, to use James Wade's word, the hottest player on the tour this year, and Johnny Clayton in the last 16, forcing Van Gerwen to play at his best for 5-6 legs to come back and beat him in the quarterfinals. We could have been talking about Krzysztof Ratajski winning a major this weekend, and he looked for the first time in the PDC like he was ready to. And it just was the former world number 1 and former 3-time world champion playing to his best that denied him that. Ratajski has won on the European Tour, has won countless Pro Tour events, and has established himself as a top 16 player overall. But he keeps losing in the last 16 on TVs. Add Worlds, add this together, he has now made that next step, and this weekend showed that he is more than ready to make that next step, and he is going to be a force in the TV events for the rest of the year, because I think now he knows he can do it. Beyond Ratajski, there's a lot of players that, made a name for themselves. You can start with Sebastian Bielecki, the youngest player ever to compete in the UK Open, only goes out and throws a 9-darter in a very professional win over Jim McEwen in the first round. And he followed it up with another professional win over Jitse van der Waal in the second round. So it's a player that we didn't know anything about. And he threw in 2 really, really top quality performances on debut, followed it up with another win before finally going out to Mensur Suljovic in the 4th round. We didn't play poorly. So, 3 really good matches and a 4th where he still won. That's not bad for a teenager. You could keep going. To average 93 across all these matches tells you how good this tournament was for everyone. There were a lot of impressive performances, but I'll leave it at those 2 players. One from the top 16, one from not, but both from the same country.
Yeah, both Polish players, and I did have Sebastian Bielecki down on my list because, as you say, 17 years of age, 9-dart leg, won 3 games on his debut. He is someone to keep an eye out for, and I'll put it out on Twitter as well. We've seen at the weekend what the Polish players can do, not just Krzysztof Ratajski, but the other 2 that we saw in the tournament, Sebastian and Krzysztof Kachuk as well. He lost with a 97 average in his second game. So the pool of players in Poland seems to be growing as far as the high quality ones. Let's see a European Tour of Krakow. I think a lot of our listeners would love to get out there and have a weekend and see what that's about. But you mentioned Krzysztof Ratajski as well. How well did he start that game against Michael van Gerwen? 211 darters. I think Michael was averaging 74. Krzysztof was averaging 136 after the first 2 legs. It was just incredible. When I was looking back, the 6 out of his 7 legs that he won in that game were in 13 darts or less, and it took Michael van Gerwen averaging over 110 for the last 6 legs, or 5 or 6 legs, to come back and win the game. We did see Michael produce those levels that we've not seen as often as we used to, but we certainly saw it in that game. So I think Ratajski a little bit unfortunate not to get over the line, and we could have been starting this show talking about him as being the newest PDC major winner. A few others I'll give a mention to. I'm going to come on to talk about her in a moment, but Lisa Ashton with that 100 plus average on the Friday afternoon was great to see. Alan Suter, last 16, we said on the show last week, the winner of that game, him and Raymond van Barneveld, we felt they've got a great shout of going the furthest out of the new lot of tour card holders, and that was the case. Alan had some great wins. He beat Mickey Mansell with a 103 average in that 3rd round TV slot that was dedicated to Raymond van Barneveld, but of course he put him out in the previous round. I'll give a mention as well to a player that we've not mentioned too much in recent times. We've spoke about him in the past. We've had him on in the past as well. Peter Jakes getting to the last 16. The UK Open is one of those events where more often than not you do get a surprise player get to that final day on the final stage, and we've not seen him all weekend on the main stage. He came within a win of getting there, just lost out in the last 16, but he had some decent wins. I think he beat Max Hopp in a decider. He had a 103 average in his first game as well. So he's someone that went off the radar a little bit getting that far. But yeah, there's a lot of people on that list that impressed at the weekend.
Now we'll move on to our first interview, and it is with the finalist in Milton Keynes this past weekend, Luke Humphries.
I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the UK Open finalist from the weekend, Luke Humphries. Thanks for the time, Luke. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Obviously, it was a great tournament for me. I'm really sort of in a good place at the moment, and it was a good way to start the year.
First off, congratulations on what was a great weekend in Milton Keynes, reaching your first major final. It's been a few days on since Sunday night. Have you had time to reflect on what you achieved?
Yeah, I've had a little bit of time to reflect now. Obviously, I'm sort of it's starting to sink in a little bit of how much of an achievement it is. Usually you get to a ranking final on the floor or something like that, but to make your major final so early on in my career, is a fantastic achievement, and I'm over the moon about it. So yeah, it's starting to sink in now.
You've already had some big achievements, of course, winning the World Youth title. You've dominated on the development tour in recent years. So how pleasing was it to make that first final in a senior event under the PDC setup, and such a big event as well on TV?
Yeah, like you say, I've had some great achievements already in my young career, and I think this one, even though I've made, I won a World Youth title, which was incredible, and obviously the 2 World Championship quarterfinals, I think that Sunday night was the most important night of my life to prove to people that, you don't just go up there and do it on one stage. I sort of getting that name where I was just a World Championship player and I couldn't do it anywhere else and stuff like that. So, I think Sunday was a really important point in my career, the stepping stone that I needed to go on and do bigger things. And I think a lot of people sort of could see the ability and the potential is there in my game to do these type of things, get into major finals. But obviously you have to prove it a lot more. And, I don't possibly get up on the big stage as much as I should or as much as I want to. But people can see now, when I do get up there, I always seem to perform on the big stage. And, that's why I'm always striving to be in the big competitions and playing the big players, because I think people can see that, I can beat the best players and play some good games up there.
Definitely. Well, we'll come back to the UK Open. Let's rewind back first. And you spoke to our colleague Matthew at a local Open last summer, just after the summer series. You spoke about your weight loss using the exercise bike. Was it hard then to keep the weight off as more events came back and there was more time spent away from home?
Yeah, well, that is exactly what happened. I lost quite a bit of weight. I think I can't remember when that interview was, but it's sort of summertime, I think, when it was in the peaks of the lockdown. And then obviously when the events started coming back, you putting the weight back on was pretty easy, because I don't know what it is about it, but you just seem to forget about the progress you made, and and then you start getting comfortable again. And this time is completely different. I think it's proved to me losing a bit of weight and gaining that extra stamina, and that not being so tired throughout the whole day really does help. And it's obviously shown after what I did this weekend. So yeah, this is something that's really going to stick for me. I ain't quite finished yet. I've still got a lot more weight to lose, and it's only going to help me in the long run, and it already has already.
Good to hear. Well, I know you played him at the weekend just gone, and I've got to touch on that game with Martijn Kleermaker at the Summer Series last year. Fortunate that it was on the stream and now on YouTube as well. What a game that was. Just talk us through that one.
That was an unbelievable game of darts that me and Martijn played there. It was pretty similar to the game against Michael that I played in UK Open semi-final. Our scoring was fantastic. There was lots of high finishes, and I think that we both suit each other's style of the way we throw and how fast we are, and it's sort of tat darts. And that sort of style does suit me, but it also suits fast players that I play against. My pace suits them. And I think, people like Martijn and these people coming through, just like myself, we create exciting games, and, people like to see the fast-paced action and, 180s all the time, big finishes, and that's what the darts fans love. And, me and Martijn never play up on TV. I'm sure people are going to sit and watch that because we do have some exciting games.
Can't wait for that. Well, let's fast forward a little bit to the Autumn Series in Germany. You had an impressive run to the quarterfinals. You beat Rob Cross on the way, then you're 3-0 up on Mensur Suljovic in the quarterfinals. Are you starting to think then that this could be your day and you get that first senior title that day?
Yeah, I think that that was probably one of my most consistent days in a Players Championship. On the Pro Tour, I was playing some lovely stuff, and I think it was after I beat Michael van Gerwen in the last 16, and I played phenomenal. And I thought, you know what, you've really not played bad at all throughout this whole day, and I felt really comfortable going into the game against Mensur. Obviously 3-0 up, and Mensur sort of managed to slow me down quite a lot, and it did affect me. He really did slow the whole game down, and that's what experience he has. If I could learn anything from that game, it would be, the next time that happens, I'll know what to do. But it was a strange experience. It was a normal game, and all of a sudden, he was taking a long time to throw his darts, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not illegal. You can do that. It's just for me, I just felt like he sort of held me back a little bit on purpose, and it's just one of those things. If I'd have got through that game, who knows? I might have gone on to win my first senior title. I didn't, but from the experience that I've gained from that game, that will help me in the future. And like you say, it was a good tournament, but I really did feel like that was going to be my day for my first senior title.
It was a busy end to the year for you. Just before the Worlds, you made your Grand Slam debut. Then you were back in the Players' Championship finals. 2 more great performances there to beat Devon Peterson and Jermaine Wattamina. How are you feeling about your game then heading to Ali Pali to play Paul Lim?
Yeah, I played pretty well in the Grand Slam. Against Chizzy in the first game. I think I let that one slip really. As a game where I missed a few doubles, to be honest. And then next game was Justin Pipe, and that wasn't the best game, but I scraped through it. And then against Rob, I don't think I did much wrong. And I think Rob probably had one of his better games on TV that he'd had throughout the whole year. It wasn't a bad tournament for me, and I took great confidence going into the Players Championship finals. And I had a tough draw against Devon in the first round, and I thought, the way you're playing, you can win. I know Devon was obviously playing absolutely fantastic. It's probably a really bad draw, really, for us both. But I got through that one, and we're playing well. And then obviously, I'm not sure how many people see that game against Jermaine, but it was an absolutely unbelievable game of darts. I think we both averaged 108 together. So people can see I do have a lot of these games where I do play up to a good standard, like with 108 averages and stuff. And against Michael on this Saturday just gone, weren't just a flash in the pan. I can do it quite a lot. And then obviously, it was the game against Gerwyn Price in the last 16 that I let it slip a little bit, and that was a little bit of not having as much experience in another way again. But in my mind, after that Players Championship run, I was very confident going into the World Championships.
It was a tough night at the Oki, losing out to Paul Lim after leading that game. It was a very different World Championship with no fans there, but having gone deep the previous 2 years, did it take a while to get over that defeat?
Yeah, that was a game that it did hurt a lot, to be honest. I let it slip, and even though when I was 2 sets to 0 up, I really didn't feel comfortable. You do get them days as a professional dart player. I didn't feel comfortable up there. They just weren't going in the way I wanted them to. And, you know, like I say, when I was 2-0 up, I was desperately trying to get that last set instead of believing I was going to get it. And, you know, fair play to Paul. He did start coming back at me with a good few checkouts, and, you know, he kept putting the pressure on me. And one of them episodes again where I missed lots of doubles in a leg that, you know, ultimately cost me the game. And after, you know, I just took me a long time to get over it, because, you know, obviously being there for the last 2 years before, having such success and great runs, to all of a sudden being a first round loser is a hard one to take. And I felt like I should have won that game, but, you know, like I said, it was gone, and that was it. And I had to sort of take a long time out. I didn't pick up a set of darts for 3 to 4 weeks, to be honest with you, because I was that sick of the game. But, you know, it's one of them things, and sometimes you've got to take them losses on the chin, and they'll make you a better player in the future from the experience that you gain from it.
Definitely, and that brings us on to this year then, 2021. There was a long break, I guess, between your game at the World Championship and then coming back to play the Pro Tour events. But we were having a look back at the Pro Tours from last year, and yourself and Callan Rydz, you were both in the top 20 overall averages. Probably didn't get the results that you two deserved, but with that Dart Connect system that we have now, is that something that players you look at more closely now, because there's just so much information out there?
Yeah, I mean, the introduction of Dart Connect, I think, has been one of the best things about darts, in my opinion. I think it's helped build the profile of darts. You know, people can follow every single game now, and not just live streams. And, you know, fans can follow their favourites and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, the introduction of it, it's been fantastic, you know, it really has. And I do look at stats like that. You know, I have a look at where I'm sitting and that, and I think I get a lot of sticks sometimes. A lot of people say, you know, I can only perform on the big stage, and it's not true at all. You know, last year I think I was sat 14th in the Dart Connect averages. And, you know, it's not all about averages, but it just proves that I can perform on the floor as well. I don't think I get as much luck as I deserve maybe sometimes, but also I don't think I take enough chances as I get given. So it's a bit of both. But, yeah, I think Callan's the same as well. You know, I think we're both very, very heavy scorers. And if our doubles are going in, we're very hard to beat. Obviously, if we ain't hitting our doubles, then, you know, that's where we slip up. But I've taken a lot of confidence from, you know, the way that the doubles can go in. And when they do go in, you know, I feel like I can beat anybody. Absolutely.
Well, let's look back on the weekend just gone and start off at the beginning, really, because on the eve of the event, you're all in your hotel. Milton Keynes, you've had your test for the virus, and the news comes out that, unfortunately, your third round opponent, Justin Pipe, tests positive, so you've got that bye through to the evening, so you don't play in the afternoon, you play in the evening. How do you try and adjust to that? You're probably all getting ready to play in the afternoon, and then you still don't know when you're going to play until that draw comes out at the end of that afternoon session.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my manager rang me before they released the news, and usually he usually texts to say you're negative, and obviously when he's ringing me, in my mind I was pretty worried, to be honest. I thought, you know, he's going to ring me and tell me I was positive. And, you know, I was dreading answering the call, and then, you know, when I answered, and he said, you know, you got good news that you're negative, but unfortunately Justin was positive, you know, and I felt really sorry for Justin, because no one wants to be excluded from any tournament, but especially a major. You know, Justin could have done what I'd done, you know, if he used to say he wouldn't have, and it can cost you a lot of ranking money and stuff like that, and if you can't be in them, you know, it's going to affect your ranking, and it will possibly affect Justin's. I'm not sure what his achievements were like there 2 years ago, but yeah, it was a strange feeling, and, you know, it wasn't a feeling that I enjoyed, because you never want to win that way. You just want to win fair and square, and I would have loved to have played Justin, because, you know, we're really good friends, but it was one of the things that you just easy to adjust. You know, obviously I found the news out pretty in good time, and I just obviously waited until the evening session for my first game.
It's fair to say, well, looking at your results, you made the most of the 8 different boards that there were over the weekend. You finished up on the main stage, but you started out on board 8 against Kim Hybricks on that Friday night, and it looked like a cracking game. You both averaged 99, 2 big legs from you at the end to get over the line.
Yeah, it was a fantastic game against Kim. You know, Kim's another player that's actually playing really, really good darts at the moment. I played him in a Pro Tour game the week before, and that was a great game as well. His 180s were unbelievable, and, you know, I think we sort of matched that same level in that game. And, you know, I that's what I took from that that's what I think gave me a little bit of confidence, was the way I put them last 2 good legs in to really sort of put him away. And it gave me good confidence going forward. But it was a great game of darts, and Kim played fantastic, but I just scraped that one over the line.
On the Saturday, you then get past Ryan Searle and Martijn Kleermaker, gets you into the final day. And what a back and forth game it is against Dave Chisnell. You go 6-3 up, then you're trailing 9-7. You win 3 legs on the spin to make a major semi-final for the first time. How did you hold your nerve in those final moments, especially in that last leg decider?
It's hard to say, because obviously people think that I look cool, and I was cool in a way, but it's hard to hold them nerves in, especially when you've never been in these situations before, and you do have negative memories of me losing a lot of last leg deciders, not because I bottle it or anything, just because people seem to perform so amazingly in last legs against me, and you just, in my mind, I'm thinking it's my throw. You just if you're out in 15, you can't complain. If he goes out in 12, then it's just another one of them things. But I felt like that was an important stepping stone to really hold my nerve in one of the most important games I've ever played in. And I took full advantage of it.
I guess we should mention the semi-final against Michael van Gerwen. You mentioned in an interview over the weekend that you'd been getting some advice from Michael recently. Was his advice to throw 107 average in your first major semi-final?
No, it wasn't. That wasn't the advice he gave me. We're managed by the same management group, and like I said, we're not best friends, or we're not really close, but sometimes when we're together, we do, in the same major, we do practice together. Or he will give me a bit of advice about a lot of things, not just darts, personal things. So yeah, he's a good person to be around. His advice was more about just how to prepare for these long days, because it's not something that I experienced a lot, and he gave me some good advice, and it definitely worked on the Saturday, and it worked even better on the Sunday, unfortunately for him. So maybe he won't give me any more advice anymore.
Well, what a game it was. You open up with 300-plus checkouts in the first 4 legs. You're leading 4-0, 7-3 at the second break. Michael didn't play badly himself, 106 average. You had 107 average. How proud were you when you came off that stage after a performance like that?
Yeah, being 4-0 up, I think I took out 300-plus outshots, and I think I pretty much needed them all, to be fair. And being 4-0 up, and I was thinking, leaving myself a double right, take this out to be 5-0, and then obviously he does the most Michael van Gerwen thing possible and takes out that big finish, and it did hurt, because you're thinking, damn it, I could have been in a higher position here. Now all of a sudden he's 4-1 in his throw, he's going to come back at me really hard here, and I held my nerve, and to dispose of in my opinion, still, I know Gerwen Price is the number one and the world champion, but in my opinion, he's still, in my mind, the best player in the world. To dispose of him in a way that I did was, one of the most incredible feelings that darts can give you. It's a thing beating Michael van Gerwen, but it's a different feeling beating Michael when he was at his best. 106 average, that is him at his best. I know he can play slightly better, but for me, 106 average from Michael is him at his best, and to beat him 11-5 and dominate him like I did, that just shows the talent that I do possess, and it's up to me now to work hard and bring out more of these performances, because I think I gained a lot of fans from that performance, and I think a lot of people are sort of standing to attention now and realising, that I can climb up them rankings if I put the effort in.
Yeah, you're definitely right, and I know the final didn't go your way. Fair to say the early legs, James Wade punished any mistakes, and when he's in that mood, it's hard to come back against him. But aside from the result, how did you find that first experience of playing in a major final for the first time?
Yeah, the hard thing about it really for me was the fact that I had sort of 14 minutes to prepare for it, and that's nothing against the PDC or ITV or anything like that. It's just 14 minutes isn't long enough to prepare after winning a game like I did. I was pretty much practicing half an hour before, about an hour and a half, before I played Michael, preparing properly, going up there playing, and then coming back and not even getting to sit down. And it's not easy. People need to understand it's not easy on your feet playing darts 2.5 hours straight. It's really hard. And I won't lie, it did affect me slightly, but it still didn't defect from the way I played. I think the last 2 legs against James, I didn't play that great and still averaged 98, so it wasn't like I put in a terrible performance. But then saying that, James was fantastic, and you don't really see 100 averages from James, but he had 102.5 in that final. and I can't complain. And maybe even if I was at my best, it would have been a tough game to win. But the feeling of being in my first major final, it's just incredible. Honestly, it feels so amazing. But it also drives me now. It makes me want to get more. And, I want to be in the Premier League. I want to be playing the best players in the world. And if I can take anything away from last weekend, it's that it's given me that drive now to really start pushing on in my career.
Let's look ahead then. You're on the brink of the top 32. I know after the weekend, as you say, you've got a lot of darts fans, new fans of yourself after watching you play at the weekend, and they'll want to see you in a lot more TV events this year. We're talking Blackpool, the World Match Play, the World Grand Prix, European Championship. Want to see you make debuts in them. Is that your main goal now for the rest of the season? Push on from this and try and get in them events?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really started off great qualification processes for the match play in the Grand Prix, so it's going to be a big ask for me to try and qualify for them. I might need a final of a Pro Tour or maybe even a win. So with the confidence I've got from last weekend, it's a big possibility. Darts is all about confidence, and it's given me a lot. So who knows? This summer series coming up next week could be a good positive one for me. But my only goal now is to qualify for as many majors as possible. I'm in the Grand Slam now, obviously, from getting to the final of the UK Open. European Championships and stuff like that. And every major I play in is an opportunity for myself to prove that I can keep performing it the way I have. And, this is all things I need to be in the Premier League. And I know I say it a lot, but it's something that I think is the pinnacle of darts for me. Obviously winning titles is the first one, but being in that Premier League is something that I'm desperate for. And, I need to start, as much as I've set up a good foundation already, I need to start and keep building on that and keep improving and keep putting in good performances so the PDC have no option but to choose me.
Fingers crossed for that. Well, just before we let you go, I wanted to mention when we spoke a while ago, I think it was just after you won 2 development tour titles in a weekend, 2017. You spoke about your first run on the development tour. It didn't go according to plan. You took a long break out. It's not been easy to get where you are now, but when you see what you've achieved at the weekend, does it make you think, I'm glad that my friend asked me to play for his Super League team when he was short that one time and I did come back to darts?
Yeah, I think I see someone put that. I don't know if it was you guys that put it up. I think I see it, and it is a true story. I obviously gave up for 18 months, and I was a decent player before, but then the friend with Chris, asked me if I could play in the Super League team because he was short, and I hadn't played a game or even picked up a dart properly in ages. And, I've played and I won and played all right, and ever since then, I'm thankful for him because who knows, I might not have been playing now if it weren't for him. But I think I've come a long way, and I think it's 4 or 5 years since I won that first development tour. So it's a compliment to the PDC of what these development tours and challenge tours can do to people. Obviously Rob Cross off the challenge tour, and then Gavin Price off the Q score, and then me off the development tour. And it's their products that they keep improving and keep breeding players like me through it. It would have been nice to have picked up that major, but obviously it's been a great time for me over the last 4 or 5 years. I've achieved some great things, and I'm hoping that I can build on all the success and create some more good memories.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure there's more to come. Well, Luke, it's always nice to have a catch up with you. Appreciate your time, and congratulations again on the weekend just gone, and wish you all the best for the Super Series next week and the rest of the year.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thanks to Luke for joining us this week. Now moving on, a couple more questions about the UK Open. We'll go back to the first day. Second round on Friday, we saw Lisa Ashton break her own record for the highest televised average ever by a ladies player, the first ever ton-plus average by a ladies player on television. That is, of course, she's done it multiple times, as have others, on the floor. What next, though, do you see for ladies darts?
It's an interesting one, and we saw the average come in after the game, 100-plus average. Brilliant for Lisa, the first time that we've seen a lady average 100-plus on TV. Kind of fitting really yesterday, Monday, we had the International Women's Day, and only a few days earlier we've seen Lisa on TV produce that level of darts was great. The record that Lisa had before then, I think it was 98, 99 average that she had in the BDO World Trophy. This is going back 2016, and at the time I was at college doing my journalism degree, and I was trying to build up my portfolio of work. This was on a Sunday afternoon. I think I was watching the darts, and I saw the average come in, saw that it was a record, rang around a few different national newspapers and said, would you be interested in me sending over a few words about it? A few of them, they said, thanks for letting us know, we'll sort out our end. A few of them, though, said, no, we're not interested. Now, you fast forward 5 years, the interest in ladies darts it's a lot bigger. The opportunities for ladies in darts, there are more of them, I guess. When you look at the PDC, they've got spots in the World Championship, in the Grand Slam. But as far as an overall look to ladies darts, we're kind of really looking to, after this, can't really say when the pandemic ends, but I guess when restrictions are lifted and we're able to move around a lot more, we're able to get local leagues on, events on. As far as darts below the PDC, you're looking at the WDF, MAD, UKDA. They're able to follow through with the plans that they've announced and the plans that they're probably keeping under wraps for the moment until things are able to go ahead and we're able to do a lot more. But I just think when we're able to do more, that we need to see more of these opportunities for ladies to get in events. And, you know, there have been a lot of people that would have watched that on Friday afternoon or saw it over the weekend. I think it's on PDC's YouTube channel now, that have seen that game and they'll be up for playing some darts. They'll want to get a dartboard set up or go out and have a game of darts, and it'll have inspired a lot of people, I think. So for me, I'm hoping that we're going to see a lot more opportunities for the ladies. I know we had Matt Porter on the show last week and we mentioned about the ladies series that we had last year. Are we going to see more of that this year? And he said that at the moment that's not classed as professional sports, so it can't go ahead. So hopefully when things get lifted, we'll see the ladies tour come back, maybe a 1 or 2 weekends, maybe more. I don't know. I don't think the PDC are going to go all out for ladies starts, but I think we could see maybe 2 this year. And we're going to need to see more ladies get involved in it, support it. And I think if we do see that, then the PDC will look to grow it as well. But when this lockdown ends and things are open again, that participation level grow. And with that, the level and standard of the ladies grow as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we are in a wait and see mode right now because of the pandemic. I would like to think once we come out of it, the PDC will have a true ladies series, not like last year where it was just one weekend, but something where there will be maybe 4 weekends of events, maybe even 6 over the course of the year, at least if the demand is there, to create a real good qualifier for those spots at the World Championship and also for the spots at the Grand Slam going forward. So I think there will be more ladies-specific darts in the PDC. Beyond that, what other opportunities can the PDC create? I think we're probably a few years off from this, but I could see a situation where there is a tour card or tour cards reserved for the top ladies players. We just this past week saw in snooker that they've announced that the top 2 women's players have been invited onto the tour for the next year. The difference in that, though, of course, is that they're not wedded to the 128 tour card spots like the PDC is. There's always been a little flexibility in that number. We've seen former world champions and world finalists since Jimmy Waite never was a world champion, but he was certainly a world finalist and the people's champion, get honorary tour cards when they've dropped off the tour near the end of their career to give them a little bit of extra time. And those were added on top of the 128. I think if the PDC expand from 128 tour card holders, there can be a spot for women's players to be reserved a couple spots so that it doesn't come from the amount, from the Q school allocation or anything else. And it's something I talked about, I don't know if it was last year, it's probably a couple years ago now, that I think would be the ultimate number would be 144. We saw this past weekend in the UK Open that the quality is good enough for 144 tour card holders. We had 160 people in Milton Keynes, and the average was 93 across the weekend. And there weren't really that many players who didn't perform, at least at a competitive level. That means there's enough players for there to be 144, and 144 would just be 16 extra. That's only 1 match per board in a players' championship event. You're only adding 20 minutes, 25 minutes onto the day, so it doesn't become extra long. And if you do add 16 tour card holders, you know, you can then add 2 spots for women, 2 additional for the challenge tour, 2 additional for the development tour, maybe then bring a few from the regional tours to make sure they get on, and then throw an extra 5 or 6 or whatever to Q school, and you also give the opportunity to have those honorary tour cards for people who've fallen off. I think that would be the level, and then you have the tour cards for women. But I think we need to hold that back for a couple of years because prize money, with there being few events, is slightly less than it has been, and we need to be in the situation first where the top 64 are making enough that you can say the top 64 can make a living just playing darts. If you add 16 more people to the tour, that will spread the money out, the prize money out a little bit more. And I don't think we'd be at that place where the top 64 would still be making a living. Most of them would, but maybe only the top 56. once we get to that point, though, where you can add 16 more tour card holders and still be able to have 64 people make a living, that's when I think there should be tour cards reserved for female players. They can still go through Q School because Lisa Ashton's good enough. She's shown it. And other players, if they have a hot weekend, are definitely good enough to get it. Fallon Sherrick, I would think at some point will win a tour card, maybe next year, maybe the following. But making sure that there are a couple tour cards for female players on tour, I think is the next spot, or the next step. But it is still a few years off.
Now on to our second of our questions of the week, and it is, how would you rate the 2021 UK Open? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
I think you have to say thumbs up. It was a fantastic tournament, and they did a really good job putting it on. And there were quirks with the coverage. Not having a spotter on board 2 could have, did distract a little from the board 2 coverage, and it led to the what was Danny Baggish thinking thing before finally people realized, it was just they had the wrong score on the board and therefore went to the wrong thing. But that's part of the quirk of the UK Open. You have these 8 boards going on at the same time, and there aren't the resources to have people at all the boards, and it makes it enjoyable. But that's really the only negative is okay, they didn't have all the resources needed to fully put on multiple boards of coverage. And that's understandable in a pandemic. And what they did have, though, was still top quality performances by some of the best players in the world. And unfortunately, we didn't even get to see all of them because of how deep the field was. It's absolutely a thumbs up for me. It was one of the highest quality UK Opens ever. Missing out on the crowd is always going to be disappointing. But in the end, we had the world number 1, we had the world number 2 in the semifinals, and they both lost to the 2 best players from the weekend. And you had James Wade lifting the title over Luke Humphries, and, well, what could be a preview of a final 10 years from now as well. Granted, James Wade will one day be like Steve Beaton and still the top 16 in the world for the 40th year in a row. But no, it has to be a thumbs up for me. It was a top quality event.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. I really enjoyed the weekend. It was a different setup, of course. As you mentioned, we didn't have the fans. It was away from Minehead, and we saw all the boards in the same room again, like we did when it was first held at the Reebok in Bolton. It was always going to be, I think, a little bit difficult, a little bit strange. I know we've got used to seeing these events behind closed doors, but this weekend it would have been a year since we saw darts with that full crowd, the UK Open last year. So it's been a long 12 months, I think, but it just goes to show really that what the PDC have done over the last 12 months since they've come out of that 4-month break, getting these events back on, and this one especially, as you say, the field of players that we had in the event all being there for the weekend, not like the World Championship where there was different players playing on different days. You had all these players in the same building, in the same venue at the same time. Took a lot to organise, I'm sure. So it was good to see a lot of, as you say, great darts over the weekend. Surprises all the way through, even going on to that semi-final lineup when you've got the world numbers 1 and 2 in the semi-finals. You're not expecting both of them to go out. I know there's a few people when the draw came out for the semi-finals, when they did that, they were saying, they've kept the top 2 apart so they can play in the final. Well, that wasn't the case, was it? Because they both lost in the semi-finals. But it's one of them events that we always look forward to every year. Did it miss something without having the crowd there? Yes, perhaps. But I think the players themselves, as we've seen during the last 12 months, they have put on a show for the fans watching at home. The first day is always chaotic, especially that afternoon session, even the evening session with the 8 boards still in action. But as we saw throughout the 3 days, it was great fun. And I didn't watch a lot of the boards outside of 1. The board 2 was on the PDC stream. I saw a lot of the main stage, and I thought they did a great job in covering all the action that was going on elsewhere. Ned Bolton has been doing that for a long time now. I thought he'd done a great job doing that. But yeah, given the circumstances, thumbs up for me as well.
And now we'll move on to our second guest on this week's show, and it's with the newest first-time winner on the PDC, Kalyn Ritz. I'm joined today by the newest first-time winner on the PDC Pro Tour, Kalyn Ritz. Kalyn, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thanks for having us.
And thanks for joining us. And what a last couple weeks it's been for you. Besides picking up the weekly Dartscast as a new sponsor along with a couple other new sponsors, it must have been a big moment winning your first PDC senior title on the Super Series in Bolton a couple weeks ago. What was that moment like?
Yeah, to be fair, it was an unbelievable moment, but I knew going into it I was playing well, not playing well because I hadn't really practiced since the Worlds, but I didn't have many expectations. Like, all I thought about was a couple of runs here and then. Just everything that day went my way. A couple of people had max start against us, and I took out a big finish or something to change the game, which I think it was due. I was due a little bit luck. Last year I was losing a lot of games 6-5, and I would miss a dart, and they would go out last start. But it was nice to have the luck on my side for a change.
Yes, indeed. And we'll come back to that day in a bit, but I want to look back on your first year on tour. You got your tour card after a few very close calls at Q School the previous 2 years. You got your tour card finally through the Challenge Tour at the end of 2019. Still only 22, but do you feel you're now in the place where you wanted to be at this stage of your career?
Yeah. To be fair, yeah. I didn't really have, obviously, last year my goals was the World Championship, and that was all I really had for myself, qualify for the World Championship. And this year I've said it on Instagram. I've done a couple of Q&As on Instagram, and the only goal I had this year was to get in the top 64, and I've done that now. So I don't really know now what to expect. I don't know whether to set another goal or just go with it like I have been. I'm just going with it. So.
Well, we'll come up to see whether you should set some goals in a bit. But let's continue with last year. It took a little while to get used to the Pro Tour. And then, of course, as you were starting to settle in, we had the lockdown, or the first lockdown in March. How did you spend those 4 months away from the tour when everyone was locked down?
I broke my foot the first week into lockdown, so I was out for 2 and a bit months anyway, regarding the lockdown. I mean, yeah, to be fair, you were right. I didn't have a good start to last year at all, but I think breaking my foot, as bad as it sounds, it probably came right for me to have a couple of months off it, because when you're not winning games on the Pro Tour, it gets to you. It really does, because it doesn't matter how well you play and you're losing. It does shatter your confidence big time.
Of course, after lockdown, though, and after you got back from injury, you played pretty well in the summer series. Averaged, over 106 against Michael van Gerwen, got some big wins. How much belief did you get out of the return in July?
Yeah, to be fair, I wasn't actually even meant to play that, because I was still in a lot of pain. I still am in a lot of pain now. But yeah, I had to go to it because money was tight. There was no work, anything like that. So I had to go to it. And again, I didn't accept any expectations. I just went in there with a clear mind and just had no pressure on me at all. And yeah, I did play well over them 4 or 5 days, whatever they were. I played some really good, consistent stuff. So yeah, it's like I said, no expectations on yourself. I think it's a lot better than obviously what Jesse's thought. He's world number one. He's expected to win now a lot of things, and I've never had that type of pressure.
Now, of course, from that summer series, you continued your improvement, and by the winter series, you made your first semifinal, got revenge on Michael van Gerwen. How are you feeling? And sorry, I should add, qualifying for the Players' Championship final as the number 48 seed. How are you feeling heading in to the Players' Championship finals at the end of the year?
Yeah, I was feeling confident. Obviously, going into the winter series, I wasn't in the World Championship. I wasn't in the Players' Championship finals. I knew that, but to be fair, I didn't know how far I was away or anything like that. And the semi-final, it did really give us a confidence boost. Like, it's like I was winning games 6-5, not losing them, and I don't know. But when I heard I qualified, I didn't know what seed I was. And obviously until you just said. But again, it's the top 64 players on the Pro Tour that qualify for that. So if you do qualify, you're in a spot there.
And of course, at the Players' Championship finals, you beat two of the Premier League player in Daryl Gurney. You beat a Pro Tour winner in Ryan Searle before taking Peter Wright to a last leg decider. And that, I believe, would have been your first televised match behind closed doors. Without there being fans, what was that experience like, playing, the world champion, but with no one in attendance?
I'm still not used to it at all without the fans. It is weird, but yeah, to be fair, Daryl, he didn't play well, but I think he had the pressure of he was defending his ranking money from 2 years previous to that because he won it. And the game with Ryan Searle, I thought it was a great game of darts. And to be fair, yeah, when I played Peter and I walked out onto the stage, it just felt weird seeing the main stage for like the first time and how empty it is. It's not the same at all. It's not the same. It has taken something to get used to it, but hopefully we do get the fans back soon.
Hopefully, indeed. Now let's go back to this year. You mentioned earlier that you hadn't practiced much after Worlds. You also said to Dan Dawson you've only put in about 2 hours of practice after going out at the World Championship. Why did you take the break from the hockey?
To be fair, I'm not the biggest practicer in the world. Like, on my own, I can't seem to motivate myself to do it. But if I'm practicing with someone, I can do it for 3 hours, 4 hours quite easily enough. But on my own, I can't motivate myself to do it. I do about maybe it's an hour a day on my own, but I'll only do 15 minutes here and there. I can't stand at the board for hours and hours on end by myself. I don't know why. I just get bored of it.
Well, whatever it was, it seemed to work, because on the second day of the Super Series, as we mentioned, you won your first title, but still you're stuck in the bubble there in Bolton. How did you celebrate winning your first title?
Well, my phone went bonkers, and I think I went up to see Dobie. Went to his room and watched the Newcastle game that day. Or it was the day after. I think I watched it the day after I won it. We just chilled out, had a couple of games of FIFA, and that was it really. Just chilling out, had some food, and then we had to go again the next day.
Well, on those next days, you still played fairly well, averaging nearly 100, over 100 in each match, but get the results, but still moved into the top 64. You mentioned your goal at the start of the year was to get in the top 64. You're already there. How pleased were you when you found out that you were in the top 64?
Oh yeah, it's massive, because now it's like, obviously this year it's my second year. I'm not defending money. I'm not doing everything I make this year just goes in the rankings, and hopefully just push up the rankings. Now it's going to be in the top 40s, and then just progressing that way, because to be fair, I haven't set another goal. Like, it's the little goals that matter, but I don't know now. It's just every competition there's going to be a goal in your head. You want to make it. Obviously, you want to win it, but it's picking up little bits here and there and just trying to play more consistently all the time.
Now, you mentioned after winning the Super Series that you were now the best player on your street, being that your FIFA opponent, Chris Dobie, also lives on the same street as you. Has there been much ribbing to him now that you got a title before Dobie?
I can just wind him up now. I've got that. But yeah, to be fair, he's lost in, I think 6 finals. And to be fair, he's played well in most of the finals, but I got over the line at the first goal. So yeah, obviously it's just banter with me and Dobie and all the North East lads, Ryan, Adam, Glenn. It's just all it is. It's just banter, and it's like a little competition. Like, we push each other, and it is nice.
Now, you mentioned some of those Northeast players like Ryan and Glenn, also Adam Hunt. We're still, of course, in lockdown, but Northeast Darts is in a great place. How much are you looking forward to things opening up and local events returning in the next couple months?
Yeah, that's what I can't wait for, because local competitions, I think even Adam said it on an interview, like, me, Chris, Ryan, Adam, we all turn up to one event and we'll not win it. The standard up here, it is amazing, and you can't beat the match competition, the match practice, and just the days out with so many great people up here, it is really good.
And of course, you mentioned the final. We have to talk about that. You, of course, went against player who was the player of the week for the most part in Johnny Clayton, but got over the line against him in a last leg decider. What was it like to be able to play someone playing that well and win your title against him?
Yeah, to be fair, Johnny missed chances, but I think the full game changer of that match was when it was 7-6 to Johnny. He brought me in 12 to go 7-6 up, and then I took out a 1-2-7 on the bull to go 7-all, and then it was my darts. And then in your head, you're thinking 12 dart, I wins it. But to be fair, Johnny, I can start the leg without a treble, and it just let me in. I think I went 91, 140, or so, something along them lines. And it was just one treble visit really every time for that last leg. And to win it last start in hand as well, it was a great feeling.
Of course. And now just a couple more questions. You said you haven't yet set new targets, but your manager, when got you set up for this interview, said that you'd like to set a target when you come on his show. Maybe just joking around, but well, are you willing to set a target now, qualifying for any events or moving any higher in the rankings this year, or are you still just going to take it one step at a time?
Yeah, I think it'll just be one step at a time. I mean, if I do qualify for any events, then happy days, you know what I mean? But you've just got to take everything as it comes, because every game of darts you play is different, and, you know, like everyone on the Pro Tour has got a game to knock you out, so to say, whether it's the worst player, the best player. They've got 100 average in them easy to knock you out. And then, you know, it's like, yeah, I know I'm in the max play spot at the minute. I'm in the Grand Prix, but to be fair, there's still loads of time to go for that. So I'm not thinking about any of that yet.
Just lastly, we know you've also been a top player on the youth tour. You've made the semifinals and the quarterfinals in the World Youth Championships. Not sure if it's this year or next year, which will be your last opportunity, but is that you have a target to finally win that title as well?
Oh yeah, of course. You want to win the World Youth. And to be fair, the games I've lost in the World Youth have all been very good games, so there's no real complaints with it. But yeah, I would like to win the World Youth. Everyone won that place on the development tour that qualifies for the World Youth Championship. They want to win it, but anyone that plays on that development tour tell you how hard it really is to even win a development tour. Never let the World Youth Championship.
Well, Kalyn, congrats on winning the title, and best of luck going forward and kicking on from here.
Thank you very much, mate. I appreciate it.
Thanks to Kalyn for joining us. Now we'll finish off, as always, with some listener questions. First one comes from Juanita McDade. With the completion of the UK Open and the strength of the field, does this show just how much the competition of professional darts has improved and that the ceiling level is rising?
I think you have to say yes, and we both touched on it in the last question, didn't we, when we said about the world's top two both losing out in the semi-finals. We've seen that in the last two TV tournaments now, the Masters. We saw two of the world's top three go out in the semi-finals, Gerwen, Price and Peter Wright. And then the UK Open just gone. We've seen the world's top two, Michael van Gerwen, Price both lose. So for the world's top three, a 0-4 record in the semi-finals, when in previous times when you're seeing those big name players get to the latter stages of events, more often than not, you're expecting them to go all the way, finish the job, walk away with the title. But as we've seen in the last 12 months, that's not been the case. It's been a lot more wide open. We've seen more players reach that level, reach those heights, get to the TV finals, win the titles. And as we said earlier as well, when you're starting a TV event and, 15 minutes into the event, we see a 17-year-old making their debut in the event, hit a 9-dart leg. To quote Phil Taylor on the Winter Garden stage, it's ridiculous, the standard that we've seen in darts right now. And I think you've got to say it's a byproduct of what Barry Hearn and the PDC have created over the last 20 years. The money that's in darts now, you've got millions of pounds on the tour year in, year out. I know it's difficult at the moment with the virus and everything, but every credit to the PDC, they've still stuck to what they've said they're going to offer the players in the TV events, in the floor events. That prize fund has still been there, and I think we've seen players are taking it more seriously now. Just go back to what we had on last year on the show. We had our Darts Legend series. We were chatting to a few players from yesteryear, and some of them said that they stopped playing on the BDO tour, the in brackets professional circuit, the top level of darts. They stopped playing that and they focused on exhibitions because that was where the money was at that time. Nowadays, of course, we don't have any exhibitions, but when we do, you're not going to see any of the top players. You're not going to see Michael van Gerwen go, I'm going to not play on the PDC circuit this year, I'm just going to focus on exhibitions, because the money is in the professional game right now. So for me, I've got to say yes, the competition at the moment, the strength in the field is higher than it's ever been, and exciting for us as darts fans, people watching it, talking about it. Difficult for us as tipsters though, because we very rarely get the tips right, but even nowadays, even less than we used to, because it is so wide open and it's not guaranteed that you're going to see one player dominate for year after year. And yeah, exciting times.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. And, you look back we'll go the weekend before at Bolton. You might have the exact number, but I think it was 52 players or something near that number threw a ton plus average at least once over the course of the 4 days there. And that didn't include the world number one, Gerwyn Price. Well, he did it in Milton Keynes. Didn't include the 4-time ladies world champion, Lisa Ashton. She did it at Milton Keynes. I'm sure there's a couple other players who threw a ton plus average for the first time all season at the UK Open. And it tells you just that in and of itself tells you how deep the field is, where we're only now 5 events into the season and nearly half of the players have managed to throw a ton plus average at some point this year. And you're going to expect that most of the other half will at some point as well as going forward. The depth in darts just keeps getting stronger, and the players are pushing each other up. I'm not yet ready to say I was wrong a couple weeks ago when I said that this crop of players come through Q School and the tour right now is slightly weaker than the past couple years, because I'm still not convinced that it wasn't slightly better last year and slightly better the year before, but it's definitely close. And very early on, there are signs that I might have been wrong, and it wouldn't be the first time, as you mentioned, that I've been wrong in tipping on this show. Yeah, I think it does tell you just how good it is, and back to the part on the ceiling going up. Michael van Gerwen's definitely dropped off from the ceiling of the ceiling that we've seen. You know, what that number one player is able to do and what Phil Taylor before him was able to do. Gerwyn Price isn't yet to that level. Michael van Gerwen's not at the level he was at. But you go beyond that, number 3 is better than number 3 was 5 years ago. Number 4 is better than number 4. Go down, number 20 is probably better than number 15 was 4 years ago. And that's because of these players keep raising the bar and everyone following them.
We started off the show talking about James Wade, and we're going to finish this week's show talking about James Wade. Our next listener question comes from George Dobson, who says, should James Wade have been a Premier League pick even before his UK Open win? And do you believe it's like he says, that his face just doesn't really fit for the Premier League now?
I think if they went with the 10 players at the time that the World Championship ended, it's a very good chance Wade would have gotten in, because he made 2 televised finals last year. He was the highest or second highest ranked player left out at the time of the cutoff. I think he was second highest. So he was right there in the conversation. The other player right there as well, I think Dave Chisnall, partially by beating the then world number 1 to 0 in the World Championship, but also in terms of just how often Dave Chisnall was able to put on a 105 plus average. The consistency might not have been there, which is why he didn't lift a televised title last year and hasn't yet this year. But the A game was there. As far as the face, yeah, maybe. I mean, the PDC definitely want to be more diverse in terms of the nationalities represented, and it gave them a good excuse last year where we got to see Jose de Sousa, who probably wouldn't have been selected otherwise, win a major. Dimitri Vandenberg, who eventually would have been selected. I don't know if he would have been last year if he didn't win the World Match Play. So it gave them a chance to bring in a few more players from elsewhere in the world and from countries, well, in Jose de Sousa's case, that had never been represented before. And maybe Krzysztof Ratajski would have been if not for Jose de Sousa, to get that Polish player in for the first time. Gabriel Clemens, of course, was still in the conversation and might be there next year. So in that regard, he's probably right, but it has become more of a meritocracy than it's ever been before. And that culminated in the play-in tournament in the Masters that led to Johnny Clayton getting that last spot. So it's not that James Wade's been written out. While you could say in the past, if it was like this, you would think he was being written out. It was more that there wasn't the reason or there wasn't the need to pick him, and the PDC didn't feel that need. It seems like next year he will be in now that he's won a major. If he's in the top 4, he'll be in anyway. I think it might not be the direction the PDC is going in terms of they're not looking for him, but they're not looking to avoid him either. So it's somewhere in between. He's earned his spot for next year, and the PDC are going to be more than happy to put him in there. But they're not going to go out of their way to put him in, just like they haven't gone out of their way the last couple of years, and they haven't, for Dave Chisnall or Adrian Lewis, for that matter, for the last few years either.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think the World Championship that James Wade had kind of killed his chances a little bit, going out early to, I know he got the 9th data, but going out to Stephen Bunting early on we've seen it countless times in the past. Players have a good year, get to a TV final or get to a couple in James Wade's case, and then have a poor World Championship, go out very early, then they don't make the Premier League. So for me, it's a difficult one. And we've seen as well, when we had Justin Pipe on the show, he got told that if he got to the top 4 in the rankings, that the PDC would change the criteria and they wouldn't put him in the Premier League. So yeah, like you say, there is that case of it being a little bit of a meritocracy, and the PDC, Sky, who make some of the picks as well, they've got every right to decide who they want to put in it. It's not a ranking event, it is an invitational event for the players. The main thing is getting to play in front of those big crowds when they come back, getting that TV time, that coverage for the sponsors is a big thing to be in. Is it the be all and end all? I personally don't think so. I think there's players that probably you could say if they won a couple of events to get in the Premier League, they wouldn't be that fussed. But at the end of the day, it's a big event to be involved in. And James Wade, I was looking back as well, there's only 2 players in history that have played in more Premier League campaigns, Raymond van Barneveld and Phil Taylor. So James Wade, he's been in the Premier League a lot. He's been in it 10 times. He's been in and out of it as well. I was looking back. We've seen a lot of players get in the Premier League, miss out, then come back the following year or a few years later. There's only been one player that's got back twice after being missed out a couple of times, and that is James Wade. So in the past, he has missed out, then come back in. So there is previous of him being not selected and then coming back in. Now that he's got this UK Open title, I think he's put himself in a very strong position. The only downside of it is, I guess, usual times the UK Open has started. The Premier League has already got underway. It's been 3 or 4 weeks into it, but the times we're in at the minute, the Premier League hasn't started yet. So when we get to the end of the year and we've had the full Premier League season, we've had all these events, if he goes and have a poor rest of the season, other players win TV titles and he goes out early in all the events, he's going to drop down that list. We've seen players win titles that didn't get in the Premier League, but at this moment in time, you've got to say you would put him as a lock to get in, and he is in the top 4 as well.
Anything else for this week?
As always, got to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Low 6, who present the show. If you want to get involved in the PDC Picks app, download that app. I know they had a few contests over the weekend, so hope you guys got on well with that. And we should say as well, it is 18 plus UK residents only, T&Cs apply. Please gamble responsibly, begambleaware.org. We might see some events from them during the Super Series, so download the app and check them out. We had our UK Open sweepstake. Well done to Michael Kimber, who wins the Danny Baggish shirt courtesy of Galaxy Apparel. Last shout out as well, we should say thank you all for listening. Thanks to our guests, and shout out as well to anyone who tweets us that they listen to the show. I know we get a few listeners, but it's always nice to put a name or a face to the listener. So shout out to Kevin Fitzpatrick. He's been doing his running while he's been listening to the show. So we appreciate your support. If you want to get involved in that, tweet us and say hello. And we should get into our darts trivia question. Now, this has probably taken the longest. We've only been doing it a little while, but we only got an answer today. So just before we started recording, we almost had a rollover, but congratulations to Colonel TP22 and Scoring India, who got it about half an hour later. They both got last week's trivia question right. Let's hear this week's trivia question. It comes from our producer, Hannah.
It's time for this week's trivia question, which is, we believe that this is the first time James Wade has been the highest ranked English player on the PDC Order of Merit. However, can you name the players that have been English #1 in the PDC since Wade's first TV final at the 2006 World Match Play? Again, we believe this is the first time that James Waite has been the highest ranked English player in the PDC Order of Merit. But can you name the players that have been the English #1 in the PDC since Wade's first TV final at the 2006 World Match Play? Good luck!
Thank you, Hannah, for that question, and thanks for everyone who answers these questions. And hopefully we don't have to wait as long because, well, you won't have as long because I think we're going to have to get an episode out a little earlier next week in order to be ahead of the second Super Series event. So you'll only have a few days to get your answer in. Be prompt and be ready, because there's not going to be that much time to hang tight until then. But thanks to our guests, thanks to everyone who's listened, thanks to our sponsors. We'll be back next week to look ahead to the second Super Series, hopefully to start getting some more clarity on what's to come over the rest of the year. But until then, just got to hang tight.